So that's the first section. That's the VR landscape as I see it at the moment. The next section, I'd like to talk about what we did inside Nokia, what influenced our thinking, and what we produced. And this is the brief I set myself. I wanted to, first of all, evaluate VR as a technology that is it suitable for learning. So that was the crucial thing. I wanted to create an excitement about VR, so I wanted the content to be good, so it can challenge the traditional thinking inside our organisation. Being a large corporate, we've got 100,000 people working for us. We have a lot of traditional instructors and developers. And they believe that instructor training is best because they can't see the benefits of web-based training if it's just nothing more than a narrated PowerPoint slideshow. They would prefer to trust an instructor to get that insight, that understanding across to an audience better than slides. I know there's a whole different instructional slide, but we have quite a traditional element. So I wanted to show them that there is a new technology that can pass over that empathy, that insight, that experience. And again, help rebuild our reputation for learning expertise. I wanted the content to be as relevant to as many people as possible. So we've got 100,000 people in the organisation. I would like as many people to experience it because VR is an emerging technology and it could be useful for their business. So if they can experience VR for the first time, and then actually I could use this for my job. So like if they're in a data center, they can start visualizing overlays of data on like a limitless canvas. That would be useful. And also wanted the potential to show this to customers, maybe to sell it to them, or at least get talking about a digital vision for the future. And we have real problems in our organisation on gamification. It's one of those buzzwords that's misused. So I wanted to create a library of good content which had game elements or was gamified that we could use as reference material. So I thought if I'm going to create something new from first principles, I'd have a game element in it to use that as part of that library. As a demo, I didn't want it more than 5 minutes long, and I wanted it to be standalone so it could be used as that demo, but it has the potential to be used in a learning path so it can then be used more mainstream in the organisation. So that was my brief. We then kind of came up with the brainstorming of what to do. Now the first thing we thought about was Nokia is a hardware company, we create telephone equipment. So we could look at the equipment, you could walk around it. The problem is you can't walk around stuff in 3D unless you look at something, click a button, then you get moved forward, click around. So it's clunky. And also a Nokia box is a Nokia box. They're not very different. So that wasn't very exciting. That wouldn't really showcase its potential. I thought about language training because you could get transported to a different country and converse with somebody. But that's not our primary skill set inside Nokia. We don't develop learning language training. So it would make more sense not to do that because somebody else could do it better than us. And then you're evaluating the actual teaching methodology rather than VR in itself. Because somebody says, well, it's better to learn languages this way than actually with VR. So we stayed away from that. The planetarium-style network diagrams was a good idea. Telephone network diagrams get very complicated, especially when you overlay lots of different technologies. So you can fill a sheet of paper or a PowerPoint slide very quickly. It gets very confusing. But with virtual reality, you can have a limitless canvas. So you could maybe have the end users in front of you, with the air interface going to the cell towers, then the backhaul kind of above you, have the data centers, the server farms, the admin equipment behind you. So you have the whole network all around you. It's a limitless canvas. So that was a good use case. And also you could kind of look at the different kind of connections, the interfaces, and find out what they were, if it was a fiber optic link and what kind of data it is. But we thought we could actually produce that in-house at a later date. So we thought we'd keep that on our sleeve to get our own experience of this. So we kind of parked that idea. Compliance training was a great idea as well. VR is brilliant for that because a lot of compliance training is pretty poor. It kind of asks kind of black and white questions. I did some last week on company car driving, and the first lot of questions is, do you speed, do you drive tired? Obviously you say no because I have this connected to part of my salary, I get a company car allowance. And if I say yes, speed, I drive tired, I'm not going to do that. But in real life, I know there are situations where I do. I try to avoid it, but that's the reality. So you can have like next generation compliance training where you're assessing those shades of grey. So I had 2 ideas, and one would be like an airport immigration. So you're testing anti-corruption training. Now, we all know you don't pay bribes, and that's kind of like an obvious thing. But if you're at an airport immigration queue, and the immigration official, and then you've got a phone call saying, hey, you've got to be in the customer site in 20 minutes. The immigration official then says, you haven't filled in this form properly. You have to go to the back of the queue. You could look around, see the whole airport was heaving, and just think, that's going to take me 45 minutes. Then the guy says, well, actually, if you give me $10, I'll let you through. And then you think, well, it's $10, I've got to be in 20 minutes. You might be tempted. So you're assessing those kind of shades of grey. So it gives that extra element to compliance training. The other option would be a load of friends or colleagues around a table, having a drink, having like a party atmosphere, everyone's talking, enjoying themselves. And somebody says, well, could you give my daughter an internship? Now, they're competitive positions. And you could say yes or no. And then you could see the reactions. If you said no, the atmosphere could change. And then you can actually feel the consequence of your action and the moral high ground of doing it. Obviously, if you said yes, then the party carries on. And then you have like kind of later consequences. So that was a good idea. But we dropped that because the graphics would be too hard to produce 3 years ago. It would be too expensive. That's changed now. So I'll come on to that later on. We ended up doing a public speaking demo. So you can basically deliver a speech. Nokia's an engineering company. Your stereotype of engineers is they're not very good at public speaking. Likewise, Nokia is a Finnish company. The Finns generally talk in a monotone. They're very quiet. So if we can try and ease them out of that, get them used to talking on the stage, that would be useful. So I'll talk through what we did with that in a second. Then the next one was this tower climbing. So it was linked to the Nokia safety rules. And it was really just to showcase VR. 3 years ago, the biggest demo in VR was this roller coaster. So we wanted to try and get that roller coaster kind of concept into our training, just to say, hey, you can feel dizzy, you can get kind of motion sickness doing it. The best thing we thought about that was climbing up a cell tower. So that was a bit contrived, and we tied it onto the Nokia life-saving rules, which again I'll come on to. The company, then the last option was some fire safety training. That was basically the company that we went to was a game company, and they were thinking about moving into education. They'd half produced this simulation, and they said, well, if you give us a bit more money, we'll finish it and give it to you. So that's how that kind of got added into it. Now, 3 years ago, you had basically two choices of producing 3D content, and there was using basically game engines. There was Unity and Unreal. Then we had the choice, do we produce these in-house or externally? Now, obviously, that's that big kind of battle of quality, time, resources, and cost. And what was influenced my thinking was this was a proof of concept. If I develop it internally, it's a limited team. I pretty much work by myself. Although I'm the head of innovation, I'm basically just the head. There is no body. I keep getting promised I'll get a team, but for 6 years it hasn't happened. I also have lots of other projects. I'm looking at lots of different technologies and trends. So I've got like work in artificial intelligence, all that kind of stuff going on. So I couldn't devote all the time to learn how to use these game engines. But there are lots of resources. There are lots of YouTube videos. They've got some very good resources on their websites. But basically it would be a bottleneck. You would be assessing my ability to use these software programs to create the content rather than evaluating VR. So we decided not to go internally. We went externally because we found you get a higher quality product, allows you to evaluate virtual reality as a learning medium. And then we can try and partner with this company and follow them week by week as what they're doing so we can gain that experience. So that's what we did. Talk about the costs. This is the ballpark costs to have like computer-generated graphics for your VR environment. This was 3 years ago. We went to a games company. There's more competition now. There's also additional software, so you can do it a lot easier yourself now as well. But basically, the important bit is the blue and the red area. Basically, 50%, roughly $7,000, $7,500, is for the graphics for that scene. Just the biggest cost. The coding's kind of about a quarter. Design dialogue, design's kind of the game kind of bit into it. It's kind of micro. But $15,000 per scene, $7,500 pretty much for graphics.
How long is a scene?
Okay, a scene is an environment, so it would be like a room. So if we were filming here or creating this room, this would be one scene. I'll come on to that in a second as well. So this was kind of ballpark cost. Anything you can do to reduce the number of scenes will dramatically reduce your costs. So this was the storyboard we created for the public speaking. And you basically want to create a story, so you basically have the scene setting. Somebody phones you up. Well, actually, so we've got two scenes in this one. We have a backstage and an on-stage for this thing. So backstage, somebody phones you up, say, I'm stuck at the airport, I can't make the presentation, can you deliver the keynote speech? So that's the setup. You're then given the learning points, so you can review good tips for public speaking. Things like kind of making eye contact, varying the pitch of your voice, not talking too fast, not talking too quietly, and all that kind of stuff. So you can how to relax yourself, keep breathing exercises, all that kind of stuff. You can quickly review. You then can rehearse and you can practice. You then go on stage and deliver the speech. And there are real-time consequences based on your performance. So that's kind of the game. What that game was, well, this is the reality in virtual reality. Just going on stage isn't that great. But you actually want to feel as if you really are there. So there's that kind of like cliche about public speaking. You know, if you don't strike oil in the first 10 minutes, then stop boring. So that's what we want to do. We want to create a boredom factor. So because you've got accelerometers in the phone, you can detect where you're looking. And you've also got a microphone, so you can actually kind of assess the volume of the speech, the pitch, and the speed. So we actually did a bit of very, very simple kind of audio kind of analysis to come up with like this boredom variable. And now, depending on your level of boredom, depends on how the audience reacts. So if you're doing everything right, you're talking very interestingly, the audience is very quiet. If you're not doing too well, they start having like gentle talking a bit slightly louder. Then you have the coughing, and then it's actual kind of rudeness when people start making phone calls. So you've got that live feedback, and again, you can suddenly get control again. So if you've lost it, you can suddenly stop, look around, and then kind of like raise your voice, kind of change your pitch or whatever, and everyone kind of quietens down again. So you've got that live audience feedback to make it kind of real. The storyboard for television was just one scene effectively, because we had kind of just effectively like a PowerPoint slide to set the scene here. And in Nokia we have 6 life-saving rules that everybody in the organisation has to abide by. So it's things like if you're driving a car, don't drive tyres, always wear a seatbelt, don't work on electrical equipment unless you're trained. And then the 2 key ones are if you're working at heights, always clip yourself on and clip your equipment on, and don't let anybody work below you. So they're the 6 life-saving rules. So you review those, then there's a disclaimer saying, you know, this is a demo looking at those life-saving rules to simulate it. It's not training you to climb towers. So there's that kind of like a legal kind of disclaimer. Then you've got this 1C all set up at the base of a cell phone tower. So you select your equipment, you then have to, and then your buddy asks, directly kind of like quoting the life-saving rules, where do you want me to work? At the base of the ladder or next to the van? So you make a direct choice based on those life-saving rules. You then climb the tower, and an unforeseen storm comes in, it starts raining, and that's great because then you start looking down, you can see the raindrops, you feel like an elevated sense of height, so you actually do feel kind of a little bit giddy. And you fall, and there are consequences based on your selections. So as you climb up, if you've chosen, you've got 3 choices of rope. If you've got a very thin kind of cable pulling rope, that snaps, you fall to the bottom. If you've got a thick rope, you climb up very slowly. Depending on how often you clip, depends on how far you fall. What sort of harness you've got depends on your orientation after you fall. If you've got a chest harness, then you fall vertically. If you've only got a waist belt, you can fall horizontal. If you've just got a belt, you can go upside down. Depending on what sort of helmet you've got, as you fall, you black out, and the screen goes fuzzy. That fuzziness, it goes out of focus, it takes a certain amount of time to come back. So the question.
How is the user making choices?
Just selecting things from the van. I've got a video of that on the next slide. Again, the belt was if you want to tie on your equipment or not, and where your buddy stands. So that gives you the consequences when you fall and the injuries, and then you get a score. So I must apologise for choosing music here. I had to produce this video quickly on a Sunday night, and this was the only corporate music I could find. I must apologise for this. But this is what we produced.
Serving customers in over 100 countries across the world, Nokia is driving the transition to smart mobile.
Diagnostics says there's a loose connection at the top of the tower. If you go get your gear ready, I'll go call it in to make sure that we're all clear. You've got your equipment. Where do you want me to stand? Okay, I'll head over there now.
Who knows what's going to happen? flavour of what we produce.
What type of hardware did you put that in?
And those screen grabs were taken from a PC. So one of the benefits of using a game engine is you can publish to multiple platforms, including a Windows machine.
Or was it a tethered? I'm sorry, was it the tethered device that you used, or
How do we roll it? Well, those screen grabs are just taken as a screen grab, like a screen capture from my laptop, because I publish the content. You can publish it onto the headsets, but you could also, or onto phones. You can also publish it onto a Windows laptop, and you can experience it in 2D, or you can use it on a tablet in 2D as well. And that's kind of part of what we wanted to do was, if people didn't have a VR headset, they could still go through the simulation and you can look around just by moving the mouse. So that's just a screen capture from a two-dimensional version from the laptop.
which engine did you say you used?
We used Unity for that one. So you've got your content. This was where I got caught up, and it was an absolute nightmare. It's basically, it's not the same as mobile learning. We're kind of used to having HTML5, and it's multi-device, multi-platform. With VR, it's like kind of, there are no standards, it's like native apps. So you have to create a native app, you have to put it on an app store. If you put it on an app store, it either has to be free, and anybody can have access to it, or you have to charge money, then the App Store takes a cut of that, maybe 30%. So commercial organisation find that kind of hard, can't give it away for free because it's an internal proof of concept. Android is a little bit easier because you can actually install the development kit, the APK, actually onto the phone. So you can just send out a QR code, people scan it on an Android phone, that's on. Samsung Gear VR. So the Android version would work with a Google Cardboard or a cheap kind of headset. Now, I forgot to mention this. When we talk about the experience, the quality of the headsets, and we talk about the accelerometers in the phone, now if they're not good enough, and this is why you get this walled garden, is that Samsung, LG, they actually put additional sensors in the headset, so additional kind of gyroscopes and accelerometers to track that head movement. So the phone clips into the headset, the power, the battery from the phone, charges the sensors here, and you get a better VR experience because you've got additional motion detection, so it's faster. So Samsung Gear VR has its own App Store as well, so if you want to publish to that, you have to either publish it to the App Store, or you can actually put the phone hardware ID into the software build, and then you can just scan a QR code as long as you've got that done. Now that worked for us because we bought a set of Samsung Gear headsets, a set of Samsung Gear phones, so we had 30 of those to distribute around the world that people could sign out. And so we knew which hardware IDs we had from the phone, we could put that on the software build and distribute it. So there is a workaround, but commercially, if you want to distribute it, that's going to be an issue. Apple iOS, same kind of concept. You can use Apple haven't launched a VR platform yet. So you could install Test Flight on an iOS phone, which is like the developer environment, and then sideload the stuff. But again, you're limited to maybe 100 phones using that Test Flight thing, and it's also clunky, it's not good for mass distribution. You've got the App Store. Your company can also send up to Apple's volume purchasing program, the VPP program. So it's on an App Store, but it's hidden away. People email you, you send them a code, they can download the app for free by typing in that code. Again, those games engines, they can also publish to Windows laptops, and again, you just get like a hyperlink and you can install it. So very simple to get a 2D version. So, yeah, think about the distribution. The last thing is winning people over. We started off with the Oculus Rift Dev Kit 1 for demonstrations. We bought this 3 years ago, 2 weeks after I bought it. Facebook bought Oculus Rift and said, I'm on it for $2 billion. So I thought, I'm on a good thing here. If Mark Zuckerberg's invested, I'm in the right direction. But then we bought Dev Kit 2, then Oculus announced their commercial product, and it was just way too expensive. Their laptop performance specs was way higher than our corporate laptops, so it would never kind of fly. So we changed our plan to the Samsung Gear headset, also because it's more portable. We were going to put these in training centres and centres of population as kind of demo equipment, so you could style it out. So it's a lot easier just to take a phone and a headset and then return it. So that was our primary high-quality demonstration stuff. So each centre of population, each training centre would have a set of Samsung Gear phones and headsets with the high-quality experience. They also had a set of Google Cardboard Google Cardboard headsets, that anybody could ask for one, they could download onto the phone and play around with it. Now, if you're going to do that, if you buy these cardboard headsets on eBay or Amazon, they cost about $20 each. If you're going to have a bulk order, maybe 300, you can get them down to about $2 from a printing company, who will also kind of put your own company logo on the front. So that's worth bearing in mind. The economics kind of balance out very, very low on that. I don't have any of the Nokia ones here, but that's kind of some examples from the company's website. So that's worth bearing in mind. The other thing is if you're demoing VR to people, I think Mark Zuckerberg said virtual reality is the most social thing around. It's not. It's great for the person who's got the headset. And he's going, oh, wow. But everyone else around them doesn't know what's going on. So it's actually quite isolating. So that's pretty antisocial. So if you are actually demoing it to groups of people, either have a headset for everybody, or do screen mirroring. Because then people can see what's going on, they feel a bit more involved, and they don't kind of walk away. So VR is kind of a new technology. You think it will sell itself, but you have to think about how you're going to pitch it to keep them switched on. So, our results. Inside Nokia EDU, we have an internal training department that looks after the training, development, and facilitating learning to the internal staff, all 100,000 of them. And then we have the commercial arm that sells training to our Nokia customers. So we've got this customer training services and the internal Nokia EDU team. So that's important. And I thought the hardest sell would be to the customer training department because they're seeing customers, they want a higher quality product. So that's where I put all my efforts. I thought my own team would think, hey, this is a new technology, it seems cool, let's play around with it. So I didn't. I just sent links around, sent cardboard boxes in the post to try and get people on board. Big mistake. So the commercial arm loved it. And so here are a couple of quotes. You know, I sent the equipment to somebody, actually gave it to somebody, took it to Finland. From Finland it went to Denmark, it went to India, so it did like a world trip. And they even got like a vice president of sales talking in front of an audience of 800 people, walking on with a Samsung Gear headset, just to kind of illustrate the digital strategy of the company. So although the training kind of wasn't the key thing he wanted to sell, he wanted to sell hardware or software or services, the training kind of had that kind of key moment. So they absolutely loved it. At an innovation day in our Dallas office, it was voted the best demo around. So externally, outside my organisation, great success. Very, very happy. It also gave us credibility, so we were able to kind of pitch to digital strategies for customers. We could work with some customers and say, well, this is the future of learning. It gave us that credibility, and that's a high value service. So it's a great return on investment there. Externally, internally, they had that kind of blinkered kind of approach. And this is the kind of thing here. A learning product manager that I spoke with was quite sceptical. And before demoing outside EDU, it'd be good to sell the idea across EDU. And for me, the whole of VR is just hype. We get to hear and read about it nowadays more often in radio and newspapers, so maybe we'll use that for learning in the future. But they're not willing to try it themselves, even though they've got the cardboard box. We have a global day of learning in the company where we have Nokia EDU put out desks and showcase what we're kind of working on, kind of learning paths of the different resources we've got, the self-directed resources. I thought the VR would be a kind of cool demo to get people. It already proved itself at the Dallas Innovation Day, where it was the best demo. But they weren't willing to try it because the person who tested it on, it didn't work on their phone. So they said, it's a showstopper. It won't work on anyone else's phone. And so they said, right, it's not going to work. So they're very, very disappointed internally. And I've been working on this stuff. So quickly, lessons learned. It has a huge potential for learning. And you've got to experience VR to understand it. And always get experience. And that's going to be the next part of the talk, how to get your experience. It's still an emerging technology. It still is today. There's still like walled gardens, there's no standards. So you haven't missed the boat. And just keep monitoring the information. And don't get tied into one vendor who then suddenly changes the direction. So keep watch out for that. Budget headsets doesn't mean budget phones. So if you're going to go for a Google Cardboard, make sure that you don't assume that it will work on all Android phones, because the cheaper phones don't have accelerometers or gyroscopes in them. That's how they're budget phones. And our standard corporate phone from 5 years ago doesn't have an accelerometer or gyroscope in it. The newer phones do, but the older ones don't. So don't assume that every phone will work with Google Cardboard. That was the mistake I made. I just thought, yeah, cardboard box, it's cheap, it will work with everything. It doesn't. And graphics are the most expensive part of the creation. If you can try and minimise the number of scenes, you will save a lot of money. Quality and design still rule. You know, VR is for everything. You've got to storyboard your design. VR isn't the magic bullet. You know, if you have poor content, it's still going to be poor content in VR. So you have to design your content. And that's my key takeaway, actually, is VR is an emerging technology. It will take a couple of years before it becomes mainstream. And we can't kill the technology off now with poor experiences. So when the technology is standardized, people are apathetic about it because they think, well, I've seen so much rubbish out there, they don't want to try it. So always try and keep quality really high. VR doesn't sell itself, I'm thinking about those distribution channels.